All set? All right. Okay, good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome back. I'd like to convene this meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, January 14th, 2025 at 10 a.m. I call this meeting to order. Do I still have to do roll call vote? Roll call? I do?
Yes.
Okay, fine. All right, well, I'm here. I can see that everybody's here though. So yeah, all right.
Yes, but in the recording, it only shows who's speaking. So
okay. Okay, Joanna Roach.
Here.
Gary Beller.
Here.
David Iverson.
Here.
Jennifer Carberg.
Here.
Sarah Boyce.
Here.
Tim Brain.
Here.
Matt Fee.
Here.
And the chair is here. Okay. I'll now read our abbreviated script for conducting open meetings. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all devices and phones. For items with public comment, after committee members have finished their discussion on an agenda item, the chair will afford members of the public up to 3 minutes to speak. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their name and any affiliations. To give public comment, you must be recognized by the chair and speak through the chair. There is to be no crosstalk with others in attendance. So in the interest of the efficient use of our time, yes, please speak through the chair. To be recognized for making a public comment, use the raise hand feature by clicking on the React tab at the bottom of your screen, and then click on the raise hand button. When you finish your comment, please click the lower hand button. It's important for me to note that the CRAC isn't required by law to take public comment. We do so because we need your invaluable input, but we view public comment as a privilege. So please remain respectful in your comments and do not disparage others or members of this committee. Okay, so you will try and turn the page. Okay, so I want to take public comments from anyone who has a comment on any subject that is not on this agenda. And I'm not seeing any public, so approval of the minutes, November 12th, 2024. I'll take a motion for approval unless there are some edits.
Move to approve.
Second, it's Matt.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor by roll call vote. Joanna Roach.
Here. Yes, I rather.
You what? Did you have something to say, Joanna? No, okay, your screen's moving really slow. Okay, Gary Beller.
Aye.
David Iverson.
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Okay, minutes of December 10th, 2024. Do we have any changes?
Mr. Chairman,
Again, I'll move approval.
Hold on a minute. What, Mr. Brain?
I just wanted to point out, if you haven't noticed, this is a much more trimmed down version of the minutes according to sort of rules of minutes. It has everything it needs, but not things that it doesn't need, like a lot of dialogue and so on. So and if anybody has an issue with that, I'm happy to talk about it, but I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, well, then I did it because I can't help myself from making the minutes, 8,000 words long. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, who made the motion?
It was Matt. I made the motion, and I'll just make a quick comment. I think since this is being recorded, I think this is fine, and people can go back to the recording if they know where in the recording to find it. So this is entirely appropriate, and thank you. And that's a motion to approve.
All right, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, second, Sarah Boyce. All right, so all those in favor, Joanna Roach.
Aye.
Okay, Gary Beller.
Aye.
David Iverson.
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay. Presentation and approval of CRAC's fourth quarter report. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you all see that?
Nope.
No. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just to clarify, this will be wrapped into the third quarter report that you all approved a couple meetings ago. Tomorrow I'll be giving both the third and fourth quarter report to the select board together. But here are a couple slides. Let's see why this is not moving. Okay, so this slide was within the third quarter report, but what I added here is this part, oops, is this part about John Giorgio coming to speak to you all and going through the list of potential funding mechanisms, and then him suggesting a special purpose stabilization fund supported by an override and potentially setting up a revolver account as well. But these need to be vetted by the finance director. Then there was a presentation that I got a lot of feedback from a lot of you members saying that that was a great meeting with Shannon Hulse to talk about flood zones and building codes, et cetera, to get us all kind of on the same page as far as that background information. And that meeting helped you incorporate or come up with ideas to incorporate coastal resiliency into potentially updating our zoning bylaws. Then we had Rick Atherton come to talk about hold harmless discussion or hold harmless agreement. And he talked about his two proposals to town meeting in 2015 and 2019 that ultimately failed. And that Vince also spoke about the tort law, which is an act that harms an individual's well-being or damages their property, that covers the town from getting sued. So this is where I need some input from you all as far as requests or recommendations from the fourth quarter report. So from the slides that I just went over about, is there anything that you want to request or recommend to the select board?
I got one thing.
Sure.
Okay, I recommend that they view the segment of Shannon Hulst's presentation during that meeting, and it shouldn't be too hard to go to YouTube and find, you know, where it begins and where it ends, and then you can provide that to them and hopefully explain to them why it's a good idea that they view it.
Is there a motion for that? And
Can
I
I
would
make
need,
that?
Peter, I need some more information about why they should watch that.
No, I just think for their own benefit. I mean, I give you information afterwards if you want.
Okay, does the rest of the committee think that should be a recommendation?
Yeah, this is Matt. I think it's fine to just put it in the recommendation saying minute whatever of this meeting, you know, is something we recommend you do. We have so much going on that unless you give the, you know, give the minute and the link, most people are not gonna click on it. But if it's there, you might get 3 or 4, you know, 2, 3, 4 of us, you know? So.
Okay, so Peter, is it the whole? Because she basically spoke the whole meeting.
Well, I think that like I said, like Matt said, if you put the where it started in there with the link,
Mhm.
And we could say we'd like you to watch as much of this as you can, and we can't expect them to, but you know, I just think that they should see it. It was very informative. We all got a lot out of it, and I think the select board would get something out of it as well.
Yeah, if you can email me some language around that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so is that how the rest of the board committee feels? Should that be a recommendation?
Yes,
Yes, just guys,
Yes.
put your thumb.
yep.
Yes.
I see a couple. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It looks like
Okay.
everyone. Okay. All right. So that's one recommendation. Are there any other ones to add?
Yes.
Go ahead, Gary.
Can I talk, Peter?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Leah, could you go back to the hold harmless discussion, the prior, yes, that's one. I have some suggestions to make it more evident what was going on. So I wrote some notes here.
Sure.
I would say something like the hold harmless discussion with Rick Atherton was discussed at several meetings. You have that kind of. Then I would say this, if you, I don't know if you all agree with this, I would say that crack is generally in favor of the concept. Because I think we all were, what I heard when we talked about it on those several occasions, that all of us thought it was a good idea. We weren't sure how yet to implement it, but we thought it was a good idea. And I think that concept that crack is generally in favor of the concept would be something important to put in the summary. And then that last tort law thing isn't clear what it really means. People might get confused from that. So I wrote this language. Would protect town against tort law claims arising from climate change developments affecting landowners' residents in high-risk areas. Because that's exactly what it is, and the way it is worded here, tort law is any act, you know, that doesn't quite, people might not understand that this is to protect against tort law claims arising from climate change developments affecting landowners, residents in high-risk areas. Anyway, that's my suggestion.
I like that language, Gary. So, sorry, one more time. Tort law claims arising from climate.
Yes, would protect town against tort law claims
Mhm.
arising from climate change developments affecting landowners, comma, residents, comma, in high-risk areas.
Okay. Okay. Do you all agree with that wordage that I could change this part of it with that?
Yep, just put your thumbs up, everybody. A new way of voting.
All right, I see everyone with their thumbs up. Great, thanks, Gary.
Okay.
Are there any other edits, comments, recommendations you would like to give to the select board?
Leah, that change you're going to add, which we all agreed with, but I didn't hear whether or not you were going, or whether my colleagues here agree that we should add the concept that says crack is generally in favor of the concept. Do you all agree that it's something that we ought to put in this meeting summary?
I see three, four.
Does
Okay,
anybody have
looks like a majority.
anyone have anything to say about that? I think you're good, Leah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so the one recommendation from this fourth quarter is to provide the minute number and link for the select board to watch the Shannon Holst meeting. Okay, so if there's no more comments or discussion about this, I need someone to make a motion to approve it.
So
So moved.
I'll take a
I'll-
sec.
I'll second if Gary moved it.
Okay. Roll call vote. Gary Beller,
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Is that it, Leah?
That's it for, yep, for that section in the agenda.
Okay, number 6, discussion and suggested edits for financial letter to town administration. We want to generate supportive ideas for the need of these funding mechanisms. Did everyone get a chance to read the letter? Is there anything you want to say about it before we get going, Leah? I mean, Joanna?
Yes, I also brought this up at our finance committee meeting in January. I mean, in December, where I said we're trying to work on this and do this, and Libby and Brian were there and said that we wanted to strongly encourage town administration to get involved with this group in terms of trying to brainstorm some of the solutions that we could use for funding, and that the types of things that we were proposing would help to create some structures so that we would be able to move forward. And that was, I think, fairly well received, right? There was no objection to the idea that we would come up with some funding ideas. I think that, the issues are timeline related, right? Is this something that we can do in this period of time, and is that viable? And I think that there are some other conversations about funding mechanisms for coastal resiliency that are being discussed that are outside of this arena, right? So I don't know how our group will weigh in or evaluate some of those things. And I think that's a question for us to consider and discuss.
All right, and thanks for doing this for us.
You're
I
welcome.
can see 2 people. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think this is a great introduction. I think from the things we've been involved in over the years, I think it's helpful, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but about hearing it a few times before maybe we're doing a formal ask. And the tone of this is these are the things that we'd like to see happen, and I think it's kind of going to come up again and again, right? So I think seeing this written out in this way is really great. I had one question and one suggestion. One question is, do we need a little bit more of a preamble or a supplementary thing of saying that the scope of the cost is really project dependent? And so because I think the question might come up from people of what do you need money for? And obviously it's in the CRP, but to understand that maybe in the news, people have heard some of those bigger ticket items, right? We all saw when the CRP came out, and it was they're going to need $1 billion. It's really project specific. So in establishing these funds, it can both help us with grant applications, because then we'll have the funding to, pay out before a reimbursement grant. Or it's for some of the smaller projects that we can help facilitate, it can be initial, and I feel like we might want something like that to say that this fund helps with a broad range of costs of projects, and it's very project dependent. So there's that piece. And then the other piece is, I think, item number 2, I'm really interested in on here. I don't know if we want to say the beach sticker specifically at that spot, because I wouldn't want people, we want that type of account established. And the beach sticker is one idea to generate money for that fund. So I wouldn't want it to be not someone kind of writes it off just because they don't like the beach sticker idea. Do you know what I mean? So maybe if I made an edit to this, it would be something like establishing a revolver account where fees established, could be directed. Some ideas for funding this account are below, and that includes the beach sticker. I don't know if that's just one suggestion I had, so that the idea itself is standalone, and then how we would generate funds for that account could be discussed separately.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Sarah said, she kind of took the words right out of my mouth as far as the beach sticker idea. Certainly a good component of funding, but I do think that that should be very supplemental to the either a revolving fund or a special purpose stabilization fund. So I would like to sort of, when it says one idea we discussed, it just seems like this is, it puts itself in sort of the same category as those two other ones, which I think are much better long-term options. So I would really like to see that beach sticker option kind of be considered more as a somewhat of a supplemental funding option. And then also Sarah brought up a good point about, starting to attach, it's very hard to determine really, but trying to start attaching, costs to some of these projects best we can, because right now they're just projects in language, but sometimes it would be nice if we were able to, start to see some numbers so that those numbers hit home when we're doing our financial planning.
Thank you, Christy. Go ahead, Gary.
Thanks, Peter. I like the letter. And my question is, if we send this letter to the select board, are we expecting them to discuss these things themselves? Should we say, we would be glad to, help you either set up it as a subject of a future select board meeting, as a subject to be discussed, because we're asking them to give us their thoughts, their consideration, but what is the next step? What do we expect the select board to be able to do when they receive this letter? They can ask either the finance committee or somebody else to take a look at that and see whether that makes sense, or they can get back to us and ask us to refine these things a little more. What is our likely expectation from this letter? I do like the letter, but I wonder what the next step is, once we send it to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And I wanted to say, I want to ask you, Leah, is it possible to take all of the 40 recommendations and put a dollar value on them, what they might cost? I mean, I know going forward that things increase over time, but is that something that can happen?
Yeah, in the CRP, there's a table that has estimations for all 40 recommendations. So
Okay.
the high estimate, I mean, it's $21, but it's about $930 million.
Right.
So, yeah, I would suggest in this letter to put something like that, and also give some concrete reasons why these two funding options should be created. And because you have to think about the community, if these both need town meeting support, the community has been, or for the last couple of years, has been giving about 1.25 million a year into coastal resilience planning. So I think we kind of need to decipher between those two or potential three things. So if we can generate some ideas to support these two funding mechanisms, that would be helpful and is needed. And then also, these both need to be vetted by the finance director as well before it would even go to town meeting.
Okay, and I want to just jump off of that. and say, you know, if we have these two things, then we've got the money that is given every year. And then also, you know, at town meeting this year, we're going to try and, you know, get the CRD article passed that didn't pass last year. So those are potential 3 places, if you add them all together, 3 different places where we're asking the public to pony up in some way. And the people who are paying attention at town meeting, and we know who they are, can get up and say, that's an awful lot of money you're asking for us. What are we getting? And so what Leah just said is extremely important. We define where this money is going to go, how it's going to be spent. We have to have a very good explanation of that. You can't just say, give us your money.
And I would suggest focusing on like construction costs, because that is where most of the money for these projects will be going,
Right.
is the construction part of it.
Okay, Matt, you raised your hand, and then I'll go to Joanna.
Yeah, no, I think if we have some victories, if there's a couple things we have finished, we're 30%, close to 30% on Washington Street. If there's others, I don't know where we are at Sacagawea, et cetera, but if there's a couple victories, that will help. I think that Gary is completely right. Like this has to be if we want something, if it goes just like sort of as, hey, we think you should do this, I can pretty much guarantee that town staff is overwhelmed. Select board staff is overwhelmed. There's a lot of other things going on, and it probably won't happen. And so, but if it's coming out of Leah, and if their ask is, geez, we'd like your support of this so we can go, so, Coastal Resiliency Director can go to the finance department and this and that and finalize that. If we make it an ask, or make it, or we'll come back to another meeting, and then make it an ask. There has to be, the select board can't themselves do it. They have to get staff to do it. And so I think that's, the more we can make it an action they can vote on that night or soon after, the more likely we are to move it along. I do think I'm a little worried about the Coastal Resiliency, district as a funding mechanism. I think that, personally, I think it's a great idea. We need to do it, but I don't think the public is ready for it yet. And I think that could tank these other 2 things too. So at some point we have to talk about strategically about what should go first and why. And, and at some point I would love to see us try to do betterments where it's appropriate and work with that, and betterment every year or something. Like, we have to show that this isn't the end of the world, but because there's going to be huge pushback. Everyone wants this stuff done so their property doesn't flood, etc., but they don't want to pay for it. They want everyone else to pay for it. They want a new road, but they want everyone else to pay for it. So we're going to have that, that mentality that, it's going to have to shift to like, okay, I'm paying for the benefit I get, and the public's paying for all the benefits it's getting, and we're sharing it in some manner. Otherwise, there's no way that I see us raising $1 billion to do all that work, So anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate your insight. Joanna, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I just really wanted to try to say succinctly is that we don't have any mechanisms in place right now to to do these things. And so this is really just a first step in trying to get these established. And that is so critical to the work that we are doing. Once we have these, then we can focus on where is the money going to come from to put in them. But as of right now, there's not even a structure that exists financially within the town for us to accumulate dollars. And that is the first step.
Okay, before I lose the thought, that's exactly the way I'm thinking about how we operate as a committee. We're taking a lot of first steps to set things up for what's coming, and I'll bet a lot of us won't be on the board when we get to see those things happening, but you also have it, so that you just have to believe that we're going to get it together. and we're going to set these things in motion. And then the people who come in the positions that we're in now, who come along, will go, man, I'm glad that those guys really set this up. Now we can do some stuff that we need to do. So I agree with you, Joanna. So do we have any other changes that we want to make to this letter? Do we like the changes that have been proposed, and are we ready to send it along to be vetted further? Does anyone else have anything they want to add?
Peter, I can't find because I'm sharing my screen, I can't put my virtual hand up, but I have something. Can I talk?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to let the committee know again that I know we discussed this last meeting, but this is too late to set up for this year's town meeting. So you might want to think about strategically when to send this letter, because if you send it now, it's not gonna happen for a while. So, and they might forget about it. And then I think I like Joanna's point about that there's no mechanism right now to even set these up. So I think some language around that should be put into the letter. And again, some bullet points or some support as to why these should be set up.
And so we need to know when the time to send the letter for town meeting 2026. And then Joanna needs to revise this letter, or hopefully you agree, Joanna, with what Leah said. And so then we now have a lot of time to make the letter better before we give it up for review. Does that sound okay to everybody? What do you think, Joanna?
Well, I mean, that kind of takes a little bit of the wind out of this. But what I would say is that it's probably likely that there'll be a special town meeting this year, and that something like this could be on that agenda. So I think that maybe we work towards that timeline.
You're sounding a little deflated there, so.
No, I think it's fine. I mean, it's very difficult, I think, for us to sync our timeline of how we process and identify issues with actions that are taken. And I think that, you know, some of what Matt was trying to say about the betterments and the, you know, the zoning, some of the changes of the zoning, you know, having a more coordinated effort of how we communicate this is important, because people are receiving information in like spurts, and it's not necessarily in a timeline that makes sense of how we would structure financial support of these projects. And so for us to have a more strategic like order of operations around things that we're asking for makes sense to me. So I don't mind delaying the letter. It's more that I think the committee needs to be, and to your point, Peter, about all the firsts, you're right. This is the first time this has ever happened. We're the first people working on this, right? We're setting the course, how these topics are going to be communicated and discussed and digested. And we have to make suggestions that fit within the timeline of how the government in our community works. So I get all that, and I think that's important. So yes, but I don't want to see this not happen until next year, because I think it's not good for the strategic digestion of this information for the public. So if we work towards a fall sort of thing and figure out when that agenda would get considered, I think that's fine. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I mean, it's down to us. We are the grassroots. We're sending it up and saying this is what we think you should do. So if we have more time to refine it so that it requires less vetting, then I think that benefits us. How do we all feel about that?
Peter, there's two people that have their hands up.
Okay, I'm still down at the bottom, so let me click up. All right, David, go ahead.
think Joanna just touched on it, but yeah, there have been rumors of a special town meeting, and maybe Matt could help here because I'm not clear where they're originating from. But if that's an option, then I think that might be a good time to act on getting this put before town meeting.
All right, before we go to Sarah, do you think there'll be a special town meeting, Matt?
Yeah, I think there is. Libby's keeping a list now. I think we're probably gonna have to do it.
Okay. Yay. Okay. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, this is just kind of jumping off what Joanna just said. I don't want to not send this because we want the timing to be perfect. I do think we need to have a strategy, as Joanna said, order of operations for like the timing. But I think going back to what we originally were saying, it's kind of like how many times you have to hear an idea before it sinks in. If like we're competing with a lot of ear time, right? For listening to these issues that are important to us and many others, but there's a lot of other things going on in the town. All that to say, I think we send this, it's a letter that's like asking for consideration. It's not a like, you need to do this now. And so I think that it's important to send, kind of have this information go out there, and then this now coupled with a strategy for, in time for either, a special town meeting or whatever else, these ideas won't be new anymore and they'll be digested somewhat. So I think that since this is put together and we've edited it a bit, and I think it's good timing to put it out. That's my opinion.
And so I just want to say something about what you just said, Sarah, and then I'll go to you, Gary. We have this luxury, although I don't know it's that much of a luxury. We have this luxury of trying to, we have the luxury of being able to pick when we want to put this out. And that is because we don't have press covering us very often. And they don't write very much about what we do. And if there was somebody there, or let's say if I was a reporter and I was covering this, I most certainly would have something to say about this, and I might write about this, and it might get out before we want it to. So just think about that. And so Sarah made me rethink my ideas. So maybe it is better that the sooner we get it out, the better, because we can control what's coming out. And if a reporter attends a future meeting and sees this and goes, whoa, I'm gonna, then they might get it out before we want it to. So maybe that is the way to go. Go ahead, Gary.
Thanks, Peter. I keep thinking about that last line of the letter, and in view of what Matt said a few moments ago, maybe we should say to them, if you agree, instead of just asking for general ideas, here we're making several suggestions. And suppose we said at the last line something like, if you agree with our suggestions, then let us know, because then we will refer it to the appropriate town finance committee or whatever committee, so we can get the further details of what needs to be done to implement our suggestions for dealing with these issues. So I want to make it easy for the select board just to say, yeah, we agree with your suggestions. You say we'd like to do, we don't want a revolving fund, we want this or that. And if they say yes, they all seem fine, but of course you'll have to go through the committees. And all we want them to do is say yes. They can send it back to us to then refer it to finance committee or somebody who has the authority to work on proposed annual town or some kind of the second town meeting to implement.
Well, thank you, Gary. Go ahead, Christy.
Just so minor. I would maybe phrase that as if you are in support of these suggestions,
That's good. Fine.
but I like that.
So now what we've heard, does the committee believe that we want to send this out sooner than some sort of fall, pre-special town meeting. Are we looking to get it out earlier?
Peter,
Well,
say
if-
something.
If it's
Go
gonna
ahead,
have to
Jo. Hold on a minute, Gary. Go ahead, Joanna.
Even if we want to get it into the fall special town meeting, it's got to go out sooner, right? We just need to revise some of the language in the opening paragraph so that this is on the radar to even get onto that, right? Like that will happen fairly quickly in terms of how this all moves forward anyway.
Okay, so
If you all agree, Peter, then I'm happy if Leah sends me these edits that she's done. I'm happy to rework this so that we can vote on it at the next meeting.
yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I would say we should do that. What do you guys think? And Leah, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just, if whoever makes a motion, I would suggest that you incorporate the numbers and the supporting ideas as to why these should move forward. They need reasonings. Right? We can't assume that that the whole select board knows why we need these. So we just need to spell it out.
And you
So
can do
I would suggest when Joanna, I can send you the numbers, but I would suggest when you rework or update the letter that you add in those supporting details.
Great, you do it.
You're all set with that, Joanna?
Yes.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion to this effect?
So moved.
All right, moved by Sarah Boyce. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Tim Brain. Just to be clear, what we're doing is we're giving this letter back to Joanna. Leah's going to give her the numbers, and with those numbers and the suggested revisions, she's going to revise it between now and our next meeting, and then we're going to hopefully vote on it and send it up. Sound good to everybody? Okay, roll call vote. Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
David Iverson,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman,
Aye.
Joanna Roach, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, excellent. So next item is kind of in my court, discussion and suggested edits on the coastal resilience section of the Harbor's action plan. Update of the Harbor's action plan. We are, and I am CRAC's representative on the Harbor Action Plan Update Committee. We are currently reviewing the draft. It is not out to the public yet. I had Leah put this on here so you all could look at it and see if what we created, what we helped create within the plan satisfies you. Are there any edits that you guys have? Are you good with it? What you tell me now is what I'll take back to the committee at our next meeting. I'll just say, oh, they're good with it, or we want to make these changes. So. Okay, so the silence tells me you're good with it. Yes, people are smiling. Jen Carberg.
Thanks, Pete. The only thing that kind of occurred to me as I was going through it, and I'm trying to scroll through and find it now, and my work internet isn't working, so I'm on my phone. But in the early section, there was a mention of increased coastal resilience education staff and grant writing staff, which I think is great, and I'm completely on board with. But I thought it would make sense to re-emphasize that as a recommendation under the two sections that had to do with that. I think it was objective 2, which was increasing collaboration, education, etc. And then, okay, sorry, you have that in there as a recommendation 4, I see now, for educator and the grant writer. But the grant writer piece I thought needed to come back down under objective 4. I'm just trying to find this, where it says improve and diversify the town's ability to fund coastal resilience and adaptation projects. I think because we've talked about how important this is, this grant writer piece, and I don't know if this applies to the whole, harbor action plan, because it's not just coastal resilience grants that we'd be looking at. But I just thought it made sense to incorporate that maybe as a stronger recommendation under the objective that's focused on how we fund these things.
So it's emphasized in section 2. You also want it to be strengthened in section 4.
I think so. Yeah, I was looking for it when I got to that section 4, when it mentioned the funding piece, and I thought it should be in here as well, because that's where it's really pertinent, the grant writing piece.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna look that up, not right now, but I'm gonna look it up between now and the next meeting.
Sounds
And
good.
if I get lost, then I'll contact you.
I can send you a note on it. Yes.
Please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody else? And I appreciate you all
Yeah.
reading it and doing the homework.
Yeah, I looked at it very quickly, so I didn't, I haven't really like sort of slept on it, but my quick impression is sometimes we have so many different things, it's hard, like what are the 3 or 4 things we're gonna concentrate, like the harbor plan, I know we have to do it and it's required and it's a good thing to do, but I wish there was a way to prioritize, what the most important things are and what has to be done in the next year or two, like there's a lot of, well, you have to collaborate and you have to this and that. And so, and I don't have the answer to it, but it's one of the things I think that this committee has tried to do a better job of, having short-term, medium and long-term and keeping track of the 40 things. I think that's a good, a good thing to follow. So
you're saying prioritize the recommendations that are going to be within the harbor action plan?
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I think that, and what is doable? What is the short term? What, if you guys are sitting there, what is the most important couple things, so that some effort can go in. If we have to do everything, like if I have to do everything at my business, we'll get nothing done, But if we say, okay, we're working on these 2 things, these 3 things, you're doing this and you 2 are doing that, then there's a chance we'll get it done. We still might not, but there's a better chance. Whereas, if you give them, if I give a whole list of things and we're trying to do them, there's no way. So I'd like maybe a little more prioritization if you have a couple things that are really top priority.
So whether you guys on the select board know this or not, when the plan is done and the committee has completely discharged its mission, then the committee will morph into an implementation committee. And those of us that want to stay on will stay on. And if not, then new people will be appointed to fill those roles. And then we will go through the plan and implement them, saying which town entity or whatever will implement them. So it's a step-by-step process, obviously. So maybe it'd be a good idea if we did have in front of us, these are the top priorities. We need to do this in a year. These can wait. So I'll definitely bring that up. It's a good idea. Okay. Anyone else?
Leah has her hand up.
Leah?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, just going off what Matt said, great idea. Yeah, I would go a little further and for each recommendation, which is very similar to what is in the coastal resilience plan, is to have a target implementation year set out for that. So I think, is it the harbor plan's over? Is it 5 or 10 years, Peter?
Yeah, 5 to 10 years max.
Yeah, so to really spell out for each recommendation what the target implementation year is, because that really helps with actually going to implement that recommendation. Because you have a
Okay.
baseline, you know, you have a basis of why it should be implemented.
Yeah, urban harbors will love this type of feedback. They'll make it work for us. Okay. Anyone else? This is not a thing we have to vote on. You just gave me your ideas. I'm taking it back to the committee and we'll go from there. And there'll be another opportunity. There'll be another opportunity to look at the latest draft. So we're a little bit ways off. But please, you know, the plan is still internal. We'd rather not have the public see it until we're ready to have them see it. So just to say that, I trust you all, but I have to say it. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thanks, Peter. This is a little bit off topic, but I think, you know, because I'm new to the Harbor Plan Committee, I think Leah's point to actually setting, you know, dates and Matt's point about prioritization of recommendations is excellent, and that it should be considered for basically the entire plan.
Okay.
So.
Sure, make more work for us. It's
I
great.
know, right? It's great.
Yeah.
But I think it's so worthwhile, because I think that's what I was struggling with at the last meeting, was how to really structure the implementation component and make sure that these things are happening and they're not just recommendations. And I think that really kind of targets that. So I think it's a great suggestion. So thank you.
Okay, excellent. Great, I'll actually have something to say at the meeting. So, anyone else?
Peter, I have
Leah?
one more thing.
Go ahead, Leah.
Question. Is there maybe in the appendix or something, or at the end of this, and sorry, I'm forgetting if there is, but is there a whole table that has like all of the objectives and the recommendations and who should be implementing it? I'm just thinking about like the table that's in the coastal resilience plan on page 250, that's pink, that like spells everything out. It's really easy to look at and see what it is, like what the recommendation is, who should be doing it, all of that stuff. Because if there isn't, I would suggest putting one in.
There is in the last plan, and to be honest, I haven't read the entire document because we're kind of going session by session, but you know, in the 2009 plan, we had that, and it specifically said, here's the goal, here are the objectives, and here's the town department that needs to get going on this. And I think we even had a contact. So if it's not in there, we'll make sure that it's in there.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Thank you, everybody, for the great suggestions. Unless there's any more comments? Okay. So we'll move on to number 8. Refine list of suggestions to update zoning and land use regulations to incorporate coastal resiliency. And then the approval of final list for internal work group to use as a guide. Does anybody have any suggestions on how to edit, modify this, or add to it? Well,
Well,
I've
if
got-
no one, Peter, if no one will talk, I don't want to add to it. I want to pick 2 or 3 things that we want to get done that we think we'll be able to get done, you know, based on the conversation we had last meeting, and you know, and what is there any low hanging fruit? What can we get? You know, what victories can we get is what I would like to know, you know?
Okay. So it's a sort of what you're suggesting is prioritization instead of just a random list.
Yeah, I guess so. I just, yeah, like what is gonna come from the state like, yeah, and Dave Iverson can help us here, like what things here are gonna be contentious potentially and hard? What things here, should, can we get done quickly, you know? And how can we get a few and have some momentum and avoid maybe a couple that are gonna, if there's a couple in here that are gonna hold us up, then just, hold on those a little bit. Plant a seed for them, talk about how important they are, but work on the ones that we know can get passed quickly.
Yeah, Dave, did anything jump out at you as things that are going to be, oh boy, or things that are going to slide right through?
Tell you that, as we've all seen in town meeting, it's a rough go. I think, unfortunately, like I really like the betterment idea. We've seen how that has flown. I think low hanging fruit. I don't think a flood overlay district would be hard to do, and I think it would be helpful for us in the planning process at some level. But I mean, I think you have to understand when it comes to development, if it's a single home on a beach, we don't see it at planning. So I think the flood overlay, hazard overlay district would be helpful. I think any educational efforts would be helpful. Everything, and I hate to be so pessimistic, but I feel like everything that is important and good is a struggle at town meeting. So I don't know. If we try to restrict how people can develop their land, we're going to get serious pushback and it won't be successful. I'm still trying to wrap my head around zoning changes that will be helpful. My concern is that we have a finite amount of property that is affected. And to target those through zoning, I'm not sure is the best strategy, since it will include some pre-existing protections that will block any real helpful change. So I don't know. I know I've said a lot, but haven't said much. So I think I would have to read it over again and look for the low-hanging fruit, because I think we need victories. We don't need setbacks or drama at town meetings surrounding whatever initiatives we choose. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to look at it briefly, and the more you can look at it and give us suggestions, it will help us more, Dave. We really appreciate having a planning board member on this committee, because it's a lot of what we're, it guides a lot of what we do.
And I'm happy to be here. It is a lot to take in.
Yeah, I understand.
Like I was overwhelmed when I got on the planning board. This is the next level of overwhelm. So just bear with me. I'm trying to take it all in and figure it out.
No worries. Go ahead, Doug.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I think had her hand up first. Peter?
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I was thinking from what you were saying about low-hanging fruit, maybe organizing this in terms of, because I don't think we should say the term low-hanging fruit, but like either a not time sensitive, but like short-term, medium-term, long-term, or like some things get put into like a more immediate action. Basically organizing those like kind of lower hanging fruit or things that we don't think are as contentious, we could kind of put into one little grouping. I think when we rank things, when we talk about that, this group has often had, like, we get in the weeds about the ranking piece. So if we can just like kind of group them, because I totally agree, if we have a list and like you get like the first one on the list just happens to be like the adopt the provisions, and you're like, okay, yeah, we can adopt the provisions, and that seems kind of like easy. But as you start to go, then all of a sudden it gets maybe more either complicated or needs more background education. And so I think maybe if we're presenting this anywhere, kind of like looking at it where what's doable, I think just kind of grouping it in ways that's like maybe more doable on a shorter term, and then just not that we think some of these things will be very helpful, but might take longer to educate the public about, and it might be a more individualized issue like the overlay districts. So anyway, just thinking of a different way of organizing it, because I know when we get into those priority lists and we're like ranking things, we get in the weeds about that. So just I think grouping it a little differently might help us tackle it.
Great suggestion, Sarah. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Peter. I've been looking at this assignment that we've been working with for the last couple of months differently, I think, and that is starting with the fact that the CRP identified updating the zoning and land use regulations as a very high priority. And so I don't think it's up to us to say, oh, well, we don't want to do it because it's not going to work, or we're going to run into resistance. I assume there will be resistance. There's going to be resistance to any kind of change. I think Concom ran into very similar resistance when they sought to update the coastal regulations, so the wetlands regulations. So I assume there's going to be lots of rough spots and probably very valid pushback. There's going to be people that have very good reasons to say, no, can't do that or don't want to do that. So I'm looking at this list not as a list of recommendations that will all get done. There are no easy wins on this list, I don't think. What I'm looking at this list is what's our best effort as a group to come up with a list of what seem to be well-informed ideas about how the zoning and land use regulations on Nantucket can be updated and improved. And I am maybe naive enough to think that there's room in our land use regulations to actually simplify some things and make it easier for everyone to navigate. So I'll start with that as sort of maybe a very adventurous goal, that it's not all going to be reining in people, it's going to be simplifying things. And we heard with all the meetings we had with all the various folks on our regulatory bodies, all of them had the same feeling, which is that to some degree our regulations seem to fight against each other. There are contradictions between what the HDC requires and what planning requires and what Concom requires. So I guess I'm looking at it more from an opportunity perspective. It is going to be a challenge, but I think there's going to be opportunities to actually find simpler ways to make all of our regulations work together in a better way. And I also don't think this is going to be a quick process. I'm personally assuming the work group, the responsibility of the work group is to answer the questions that people are asking here. How do we prioritize these? How do we segment some of these into maybe big, hairy, scary long-term challenges versus, there's an easy one, there's a layup, right? I think that's what the work group's first job is going to be, is looking at this list and saying, oh man, I'd set that one aside. That's going to require a couple of years of labor to get further along. So I guess to sum it up, I'm not scared by the proposition that this is a lot of work. I assume it will be. I know I don't know nearly enough to have an informed opinion on a lot of these things. So I'm going to do a lot of learning in the work group. And I guess I'm looking forward to the work group because I think we're all going to learn a lot from it. And I hope that's helpful input. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. Sorry, thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Peter. I have two suggestions. The first item on the screen right now looks like something that we would not get a lot of pushback from our voters on, because it's basically, if you don't update the floodplain bylaw, then you won't be allowed to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. So hopefully people will say, well, gee whiz, we ought to not fight that thing, because then we won't be allowed to participate in money that the government's going to give out in terms of flood insurance. So I am mindful by the fact that, as you recall in our discussion with Sharon, the state of Massachusetts hasn't even put the standards in place yet. They're not due until probably next year. But this provision is required in any event. So to me, it's like low-hanging fruit, and it's something that people won't fight about. and it's going to have to be done anyway, because at some point, we will be barred from participating in the National Flood Insurance Program benefits. That was the first one. The second thing I was thinking about, well, the second thing is that when you talk about the flood hazard overlay district, I'd like to remind my colleagues here that there's probably going to be continued confusion over the coastal resilience district and the flood hazard overlay district. We're going to, I think, the CRD is going back to the town meeting this year again. And so if we're going to go back to them anyway on the CRDs, which were defeated last time, I don't think we should offer this at the same time, because people will be considerably confused as to what they're voting for, and whether, if the CRD fails again, then maybe we should look at this as a second choice. The third comment I have is that if we're looking for something that we seem to be in favor of, perhaps we should move up the priority of the hold harmless that we were talking about over those several meetings. How about that as putting that up on the high priority? The question is, do we think that there will be resistance from the voters if we decide now to put up this proposal again to insulate the town from lawsuits by people building in high-risk areas? It failed in 2015 and it failed in 2019, but this is 2025, and we're watching real life happen, whether it's in the East Coast or California. So maybe people will be more inclined. And to me, that's something that we are all in agreement on. And most of us, I mean, I don't understand why the public will be motivated to object to something like that, because it saves the town from harmful lawsuits if the people continue to build in these high-risk areas. So I would move that up as a second or third priority.
All right, great suggestions, Gary. Leah?
Thanks, Peter. I just want to clarify that any changes wouldn't go to this year's town meeting. It would, at the very earliest, be next year's. So that's one thing. And then as far as like grouping these into different sections, I think that you can just let the internal work group do that. They're going to be, looking at these, and there'll be a planning staff and planning board member on it, as well as Doug and myself. And I would say just leave it to that group to figure out what the low hanging fruit is and what can and cannot, happen. So I would just suggest sending this comprehensive list as is if there's no additions, and that's it. And then the work group can take it from there.
It's Matt. I'm in, even though I brought up the other, I started the discussion because I like one or two things to do. I think that's fine, Leah. I support Leah's suggestion.
I do too, and I have a suggested addition. As some of you guys know, I have a place in Maine on an island called Vinyl Haven. Vinyl Haven, its harbor is the reverse of Nantucket's harbor. When you're here on Nantucket in the summertime, all you see are mostly pleasure boats. On Vinyl Haven, when you look in the harbor, you see mostly lobster boats and fishing boats, and almost the entire length of the waterfront is working waterfront. Whereas on Nantucket, we have just little tiny pieces that are working waterfront. And I want to find a way. I suggest, under other suggestions, that the work group find a way to protect the existing working waterfront that we have now as the water comes up. So no matter how high the water gets, we still have the working waterfront. And I guess what I'm talking about is, if we start at the west end of the island, talking about the Jackson Point Pier, I'm talking about the pier on F Street, I'm talking about the town pier, Children's Beach, anywhere that fishermen and people who work on the water need access to the water. And as you know, the representative to Crack from the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, I know this is kind of coming late, and I will be making a suggestion, or at least saying that that's what I want to do at the next harbor plan on our next SHAB meeting. But the water can come up and it can cover land that that is now considered land public access. I don't know how that's going to work for the town pier. If the town pier gets inundated, does the town pier then rise out of the water and does it stay there? I don't know how all that works. But I want to make sure that we keep the working waterfront areas open, so that whatever comes along for commercial fishing or recreational fishing, as in the charter fishing boats, there'll be a way to get to the water to do those things, because it's part of the livelihood for a lot of people on the island. So that's my suggestion. Leah?
Thanks, Peter. I just have a question for Dave because I'm not well versed in the zoning. Is that a zoning thing, a working waterfront? Like I'm just having a hard time to figure out if that would actually fall into an updating zoning bylaw.
And let me just clarify before Dave speaks. It's basically public access to the water. The town pier, the other public access, as I mentioned, are all places where multiple uses are allowed, including commercial fishing. So I guess maybe my terminology should be changed, but. Go ahead, Dave, if you have anything to say.
Well, listen, all the water, the downtown is a commercial district. So I think as far as working, you would be fine there. Access is an Article 90 thing, I think, and Matt might be able to help on that, because I don't have a great understanding of Article 90, but I'm almost positive what it does is it protects access to the water. And actually there's a bunch of people in this meeting that could probably address Article 90 better than me. So, but I think that's the answer for, to keep public access to that working waterfront at some level.
So I guess I'm thinking about when I wrote for the Nantucket Beacon, and the property that's down really close, it pretty much abuts Jetty's Beach. It's the Johnson property, I think.
Yeah.
And that guy, he lost land because of erosion. And so he lost land. It went away. But then over time, his engineers documented he gained the land back, but he had to go back to the land court to get it reestablished as his land because it came back. I guess that's kind of where I'm thinking. It's like the water comes up and it becomes land under the ocean, and it's no longer. I just want to make sure that it's kind of like the Sconset Bluff Walk. The guy who created it, William Flagg, he made it so that no matter what the bluff did to migrate inland, there would always be a path. So it just sort of moved with the land. I know I'm clutching at straws here, Dave, but I'm just
way above my pay grade here, to be honest.
Okay, Matt knows
I know enough to be dangerous. I don't know that much. The one you're talking about down on Hulbert Ave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. If land goes away, then it disappears. But if it comes back, it gets added on to the homeowner who's had it added onto his property.
Right.
Like it doesn't go back to someone who used to own it. When it accretes, it goes to them. And so what the town ended up doing was splitting the difference to be able to keep the access road open.
Right.
And we put a rock there and, because they were gonna close it, so we put a rock and, there was litigation, but we sort of split the difference of what came back. What Dave's talking about is chapter 90, which this is a state law that requires, access to the water in between the low and high water. That'll stay in place, and that stays in place even if things move. But it becomes a question of, it's not really enforced by the state. It's one of those things we have to try to enforce and try to get them to do it for us. And no one really pays attention. If you're supposed to do a chapter 90 thing, it may or may not be, paid attention to. But I think, so I'm not worried so much about, and I think we're gaining more access to the harbor, to the water, as the land bank is purchasing properties on Washington Street and other areas. They've prioritized that. I think that is, opening up our harbor to the public more than, more than it was even when I was a kid. So I think in some ways that's a positive.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, Matt, about the land bank opening up more areas to the public, but as Rachel knows, and you probably do too, Matt, the long drawn out process of solving the Petro Landing situation, where they didn't like the plan that was going to go there, they being the neighbors, creating an area that's people are going to have a picnic at or swim at or maybe fish from. Okay, and most people are going to say that's awesome, but as we learned from those lawsuits, a lot of people have a problem with the noisy, smelly fishermen doing their thing on the shoreline. So I'm just trying to be proactive anyway. I hear what you're saying, Matt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess sorry, Sarah, I'll just finish up. That would be, that's a good thing to, have in the harbor plan and try to,
Right.
encourage. I think that's fine. I think, how do you do that?
Right.
It's more difficult, although it's, maybe it is, town pier or a new town pier that has that on it, et cetera, so eventually.
Okay, and I will definitely be relaying what we said here to the harbor plan and to Shab.
And my mom almost bought Petro Landing back in the day, which is crazy.
And what was she going to do with it?
Oh, she wanted to sit there was a little building there. She wanted to sit at that building and watch the water in her retirement.
Okay.
Didn't happen.
Oh. Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. And go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. Just a comment more to what you were saying, Peter. I think that we don't often talk about in this group, like, how much of our cultural heritage do we is like of the purview of the CRAC committee. And so I appreciate mentioning the working waterfront. I think it's just a through line that we think about with different decisions. I don't know that it goes into zoning. I'm still learning more about the zoning bylaws as we go along. But I definitely think, I know a lot of people were that were concerned about the working waterfront went to those initial meetings about the harbor plans for both harbors. And so I think that anything you said, I think should definitely kind of filter into that plan. And I think just making sure not just access, but the appropriate uses, I think that's something that I know in my family, we own a charter fishing business, for full disclosure, that we think about a lot is not just that the access is there, but that the livelihood is like allowed to happen there. And I think that there's lots of other things we can talk about in terms of what needs to be on the working waterfront, like maybe some fuel, that would be great. But that's, I think all that goes into chapter 90 as well. And also the other thing that comes up a lot is not just the sea level rise generally, but storm surge, how to get boats out of the water when Children's Beach is closed, how to get the larger boats out of the water that can't just be trailered. There's a lot of more emergency storm preparedness that is that type of access that's different than just being able to look at or walk to the water. So I know it's not pertinent to this conversation, but just because you brought it up, I think it's kind of those things that we have in the back of our minds for different projects when different things are brought up. So I think, it's important to our community and a lot of people's livelihoods.
No, I think it's very pertinent, and it's a lot of the reason why we had Holly Backus on the, on our committee when we were creating the plan, because there is a large historical component that needs to be protected that is in danger. So, so I think it's very relevant, Sarah, and thank you. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you, Peter. I just wanted to, and I recognize the relevance is questionable, but I just wanted to mention that, this is a real issue that you're discussing. And I think I guess maybe you and I can have a conversation offline about this, because public access is not universally accepted. And it's something we deal with a lot at the land bank. And, petrol landing is just one example of times where we've encountered that. In Chapter 91, while it is sort of the, the overarching protection, as Matt mentioned, there's really not very much enforcement on Nantucket. So these are that public access to, and particularly for the working waterfront, like Sarah was saying, not really having the right type of access. These are all actually kind of pretty major issues that if you ever want to chat on offline, happy to.
All comes to you.
We should talk.
In your cushy office.
Yeah, lots of windows. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Okay, is there anyone else? And so, Leah, do we need a vote to send this up to the work group?
Yes.
Okay, who wants to make that motion?
So moved.
Wait, you're on the work group.
Yeah, I can make a motion, can I?
Okay. You're a glutton for work. Okay. And we very much appreciate you being on that committee, on that work group. Okay, motion by Doug Rose and seconded by Matt Fee. Okay, make sure I'm at the top.
Sorry,
So,
Peter, can I just ask a clarifying question to the committee?
Sure.
So essentially there's, I guess, two different sections, stuff from the CRP and then additional suggestions. Do you all want to keep that, or do you want to just have it a full list without these kind of or without these headers?
Me personally, I think it should, the work group should know where the suggestions came from. You guys think that's okay? Yes. Okay. Did you have something more to say, Doug? Okay. Okay, so roll call vote. Doug Rose.
Aye.
David Iverson.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce.
Aye.
Gary Beller.
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg. Matt Fee.
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, thanks for a great discussion. Item 9, discussion about which local regulatory entity to incorporate coastal resiliency into next. What do you guys think? Which one should we go after next? You got something to say, Doug? You're muted.
Sorry. I always raise my hand when no one else is talking. Yeah, my feeling is I think the zoning, the land use regulation advance or update, the way I'm thinking about it, I think inevitably will bleed into the ZBA and probably several other regulatory bodies that we haven't really even given a whole thought to yet. So I personally am not alarmed that we don't have another regulatory body teed up yet. I feel like this work group's going to have a huge amount of work ahead of it. And like I said, it's going to naturally bleed into other groups. So I personally am not troubled to not have one identified, but I'll defer to others.
Okay. So Leah, do you think we should just let the work group assimilate the zoning board of appeals, or do we need as a committee to spell out what the zoning board of appeals should focus on, so that then the work group will get a little bit of a little bit of help from us?
I would suggest to let the work group meet, a couple meetings and see where it goes. And then, like Doug said, it might overlap in other regulatory bodies, or we can kind of have an idea of which one to go to next. But
Okay,
up to the committee.
how do you guys like that? Yes? So we just sort of pass on this item?
Yep.
Okay. Do we need a vote for that, Leah? You're on mute. Unmute game.
I don't think you do, but if you just want to be safe, you can do a vote.
Peter, we're not deciding anything. We're deciding not to do anything, so we don't have to vote on anything, right?
I don't think so. All right, well, everyone's nodding their head and smiling and putting up the thumb, so I think we're good just moving along and seeing what the work group comes up with. And I know that Doug will give us great reports on what they're doing, so then we can decide later on into the winter which regulatory entity we're going to go with next. Okay, good. Number 10, new business committee and natural resources department reports from planning board, Concom, SHAB, the select board advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers, and other committee members. Do we have any reports? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, just briefly, the next meeting on the Sconset Bluff issues is tomorrow at from 10 to 12. It's a special meeting if anybody cares. And they're continuing to go through and refine the orders of conditions. And so that's all. Just if anybody's interested, it's tomorrow, 10 to 12.
And is it totally Zoom, or can you actually go to a physical place?
I think, well, the physical place is that trailer and it has no heat, so I would recommend Zoom.
No, nope.
Is that
I'm going to
wrong?
correct you. I've gotten an email from Erica that says that the heat is back on in the trailer, which is,
Oh, good news. Last I heard from Will was that it wasn't, but anyway, you can do it on Zoom. I'm pretty sure it'll be restricted to 2 hours, and it won't be the last. But we're getting close to a vote, I think. So
okay. Thanks for that. And I updated everybody on what we're doing with the harbor plan committee. So that's that. Anyone else have anything to add?
Can I give an update, Peter?
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to update. We had the virtual community open house for the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project, which is a town and land bank project funded by Remain and the Community Foundation. So our first meeting was last night, and it was pretty well attended. There were like 75 participants. It was interactive. I saw some of you all were there, so thank you for joining. We'll be having another one tomorrow morning from 9 to 10 a.m. It's the same one as last night. So if you came last night, no need to come tomorrow. But we got some good feedback, and the work group will be deciding which design to move forward with next week.
So I attended it, and I didn't comment. I just wanted to listen. I just wanted to see what the public was saying, where their heads were at. I just if you did attend or you didn't, I recommend going to the next one, because it'll be new people hopefully, or it'd be interesting to see if they're the same people showing up. But definitely it'll help your knowledge base for being on this committee. Definitely. Okay, discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. Next meeting is January 28th, 2025, on Zoom. Okay, so I guess that's it. We're going to get done early. That's awesome. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Moved by Gary, seconded by Matt. Roll call vote. David Iverson.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Gary Peller,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
aye.
and Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thanks for a great meeting, everybody. Awesome. Hour
Yay,
and a half.
we ended early. Oh wait, let me stop the recording.